My next guest returned to his familial roots here in Minnesota, practicing law in the family firm and coaching youth sports. He is now completing his first legislative session and joins me in the studio to talk about how it's going. Senator Nick Frentz, welcome.
Thanks, Shannon. Thank you for having me.
Why did you run for Senate, and is this your first foray into politics?
It is my first foray, and my main reason is that I'm a big fan of our area. We live in North Mankato, but I've worked for people in Mankato, St. Peter, and all across the district, and I like them and I respect them, and you just naturally want to do good things for them. So people suggested I might run, and I'm glad they did. It was a good decision.
And you're enjoying your time here thus far?
Enjoying it immensely. I thought I would enjoy it, and the joke around town is I enjoyed it so far more than I thought I would.
You grew up in California, but attended college and law school here in Minnesota. So what brought you back and why did you stay?
Well, my father's side of the family has been in Mankato over 150 years. So as a child, he was raised there and then drafted into the Army. He was shipped out to Northern California. I was actually born on an Army base in Northern Japan while he was serving. And he married my mom, a nice lady from Los Angeles, and we were raised out in California. But we came back to Mankato summers, some Christmases. And I always liked the people in Minnesota, and I liked the kind of sincerity that I saw. And we had tons of family down there, and my great-grandmothers were both still alive back then, so I decided to move back, and I did the minute I got out of high school 37 short years ago.
And then college, and then law school, and then settling down in Mankato.
Yeah, married a nice girl myself from Cottage Grove, and she and I settled in North Mankato in 1989. We got married after I went to McAllister and William Mitchell College of Law, just right up the street from here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know, when we spoke last week, you mentioned the challenge of missing your family, not being around to help out with chores like shoveling snow. Based on your experience thus far, and you said you're really enjoying it, is it worth the sacrifice, though, of juggling, you know, here and there?
Sure, I think it is. It's an honor to serve. Again, I'm a big fan of our area. I'm a fan of Minnesota. So it's hard to come home to an empty apartment when you've been coming home for 30 years and kids come running up, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. First of all, it's okay because 3 of the 4 of them have moved out and they can never come running to the door anymore because they don't live there. And also, I get home usually on the weekend to see my wife, and we have one son, a 17-year-old, who's still at home, so I get to hang out with him.
You did pro bono work on behalf of the I35 Bridge Collapse victims. You're now on the Transportation Committee. So how does your work in the aftermath of that tragedy affect your views on funding the state's roads and bridges?
Well, first of all, the I35 Bridge Collapse was one of the great tragedies to hit our state, and the reaction of the state of Minnesota was something I think we can all be proud of. I was very honored to be asked to work on that, along with 19 other law firms, to help the people that had been hurt and killed in the collapse. But the state of Minnesota did a great job too. We had a World Trade Center type compensation fund which helped those victims, and it also brought to light something that does matter in the Senate Transportation Committee, which is we need to consider safety as one of the core missions of the state when we're funding transportation. And when you see a bridge go down, you start saying why. And as we look at the state's funding needs for transportation and the level that we hope to fund, one of the key features is safety. And some of these roads can't go much longer. And the money to fix those roads and the safety that comes with it is very important. So I see that experience of working on the I-35 bridge claims as directly related to what I'm trying to help the state do in transportation.
There's a lot of disagreement about how to fund ongoing transportation projects. What's your take on that?
I was a gas tax advocate early, and I just think as I watch other states around the country use the gas tax to provide stable, long-term, adequate funding, that's a better route to go. I was also very encouraged. We have rural Nicollet County in my district, some of the best farmland in the state and therefore in the country. Minnesota corn growers, Minnesota soybean growers, Minnesota pork producers, all have gone public asking for a gas tax. So in my opinion, that's the smarter way. As we see this week some of the budget debates, we're watching the cost of not coming up with new revenue, which is some very serious proposed cuts to the budget in education, health and human services, and I just think Minnesotans would be better served. Having said all that, I'm open-minded to compromise. I hope that the governor and our legislative leaders are too, and I hope we get something hammered out to sort of put transportation behind us and say this is the way we're going. And Senator Newman chaired our committee, and I thought he did a nice job, even though we disagree on the ultimate result.
In the journal Minnesota Lawyer, you said one of your priorities is to improve bipartisanship. How are you doing that?
Well, I don't know. I think, one thing is you show respect for the people across the aisle. For example, the freshman GOP class in the Senate has 12 gentlemen. I know them all. I like them all. I'd like to think that we can talk about issues. My neighbor, Senator Draheim, emailed me last night on an issue that we were debating on the floor. I think everyone wants to get it right. So as long as we're able to listen to what the other side has to say, share ideas a little bit, and be willing to change your view if you're honestly convinced. I think bipartisanship is a natural result of that. I also like the decorum in the Senate. I think most people, including the freshmen, have an idea, hey, we're going to be here a while. Might as well learn to get along with the people on all sides of the issues.
Last question. Have your views on the political process changed now that you're on the inside?
Well, I don't know if I knew what to expect, so some of my views were not yet formed when I got here, but I really do think the people of Minnesota, if they got to look at the way it works here, would be on the whole pleased. I think it's always frustrating for citizens, for voters, for taxpayers when something doesn't get done. Why can't they agree? Why can't they compromise? I heard that all the time on the campaign. But for the most part, you have people representing all parts of the state. You have a process where there's voting. Committee allows public testimony. It's a good system, and I think it's fair. Right now we have Republican majority in the House by about 20. You have Republican majority by 1 in the Senate. We have 100% of the governor as a Democrat. So it's a fairly even split amongst the influence, and hopefully reasonable minds will prevail and we'll get something worked out. If not by May 22nd, then shortly thereafter. I have to get back to Mankato and get back to work at the law firm.
That's right. Senator Frentz, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure, Shannon. Thank you for having me. Have a good week.